Each point identified on this map by a number relates to an associated brief description in this video. The trail is 1 mile long and it's suggested you start at the Merry Bells car park. Along the trail you will find some interpretation boards that supplement the information given in this video. Please be careful walking around the village as some of the pavements are narrow and the traffic can be heavy at times. Please also respect the privacy of the residents, as most of the buildings on the route are privately owned. Wheatley developed adjacent to an important cross-country route between London and Worcester, where the route crossed the River Thames, initially by a ford just east of Wheatley and subsequently by a succession of bridges. A traveller wanting to go to Oxford took a spur along Wheatley's curved high street and then overshot over plains shown in orange on the map. Later this was part of the old Oxford to London Turnpike Road. Wheatley boasted several inns and other trades including wheelwrights, maltsters and smiths which served this traffic. This site in Church Road, originally Back Lane, was acquired for a parish church in 1849. The chapelry of Wheatley was separated from Cuddesdon parish in 1854. The new church, designed by the architect G.E. Street, he also designed Cuddesdon College, cost around £1,750 and was begun in January 1856. The church was consecrated in 1857. The spire was added in 1868 by Holland of Tame. The bell tower has a Russian bell, gifted by Corpus Christi College, Oxford in 1920. The church is Grade 2 listed. The original school playground, shown in this photograph from around 1910 to the west of the church, became residential use in the 1980s when the primary school relocated to the former secondary modern school on the Westfield Road, and the original 1858 school buildings further to the west were also converted to houses. Passing a terrace of cottages built in the late 1840s, cross Holloway Road to the recreation ground where you will see the lockup. Following a spate of political rioting across the country, this distinctive limestone building was built by the overseers in 1834 as an overnight keep for rioters before being taken to the Oxford courts. It's a Grade 2 listed building. The surrounding area was a quarry of high quality limestone which was used from the 14th century for buildings in Wheatley, Windsor Castle and some Oxford colleges. Once quarrying ceased, the area became the parish pit and was also used for bull and badger baiting until stopped by the constables in the 19th century. The pit was filled in and became a recreation ground in the mid-20th century. To the left of the trees you'll see the depth of the quarry and the cliff face. Take the right-hand fork along Westfield Road to just beyond the Kiln Lane junction at the driveway to Rock House and the gate to the red spot on the map. The Cooper family had a brick kiln here by 1742. Using these bricks, the old house was built in the late 18th century for this family, who also owned the quarry on the other side of the lane, where they had lime kilns. They used the local Kimmeridge clay to make their bricks, which are found in many of the Wheatley properties. The brickworks here closed in the 1890s, moving to Littleworth, where there was a similar seam of clay. Early in the 1960s, the house was used by the bailiff for the Shotover estate. Walking back along Kiln Lane, cross to the High Street to see one of the walls of this house, which was rebuilt in brick in 1847, as was fashionable at the time. This was once an extensive green area. Coaches passed the village green on their way to Shotover Hill and Oxford. A stream used to run down the centre of the High Street with stepping stones. There are grills at intervals along the High Street where the stream, now in a culvert, can be seen. Modern houses now fill most of the green on the High Street shown in this photograph and Littleworth Road. The present Manor House is late 16th century and was let by successive well-endowed owners. In 1864, the house was divided into 4 cottages. Restoration to single occupation had taken place by 1939. It's Grade 2 listed. On the other side of the road is... This was a pack-horse inn in the 16th century, being on the old coaching route. After coaches had been rerouted along the current London Road, it closed as an inn. About 1830 it was converted into 3 tenements and remained so until 1959, when it became 2 homes. Next door is Mitcheldene, which dates from 1648. In 1818 it was acquired for an endowed school under the will of the Bishop of Oxford, Charles Moss, and it remained a school until 1858. The girls were taught in the main house and the boys in an older building in the garden behind. The building reverted to housing, staying in the same family until the mid-1990s. Built in the 19th century when it was the Railway Inn, later it was renamed the Sandpiper and then the Common Room. The building is now a private house. Once thatched, in 1847 this cottage became the Post and Telegraph Office run by Mr. Lovelock. Barclays Bank took over the premises in about 1926, moved to Station Road later, and then adjacent to the Merry Bells in 1972. After the bank had moved, the frontage of the High Street was used as a general store, changing hands several times and trading as Phipps, Yates and finally Martin's Newsagents, which closed in 2000. It's now a private house. East of Holloway Road, part of this inn can be traced back to the 1500s, although we do not know its name then. It was certainly named the William and Mary after their joint reign, 1689 to 1702, and more recently became the King and Queen. The chimneys and other features are original. Opposite is the original war memorial in the Memorial Garden was close to the High Street entrance, but a replacement memorial donated by an Oxford college in the 1960s was placed in the current position. On the right of the entrance is a plaque for the Chapel of Ease that stood near the far gate to Bell Lane until 1795. A new building dedicated to St Swithin, but known locally as St Mary's, replaced it on the same site until 1857, when the parish church took this name on completion in Church Road. A few of the original graves can be found in the grass. Leave by the top gate, cross Bell Lane and walk up the main road to the pedestrian crossing over to the 2019 development, the Sidings, which replaced the Railway Inn. Just below this is an interpretation board. Further up, by the first road narrowing, the road bridged the railway. To the left and at much lower level was the site of the old railway station, opened in 1864 and serving Oxford and London. Adjacent to the station was Avery's sawmill, providing wood for the furniture industries in the High Wycombe area. The railway was closed in 1963, and in 1994 the land was developed for housing, with buildings and roads named after local railway connections. Retrace your steps, turning right down Bell Lane, which has many old cottages. As you turn right into the High Street, this was once the Bell Inn. Notice the bells on the plaque on the house wall. The deeds dating from 1612. It remained an inn until 1854, when William Chillingworth became the owner as a result of the loan default by the licensee. He rebuilt the Bell Lane frontage in brick, as this was then fashionable. The building 50 yards along on the other side of the road was the White Hart public house, rebuilt after a fire soon after 1822 and finally closed in 1999. It now functions as an Indian restaurant. The building to the left was the club room, where the Wheatley Morris men used to meet before its conversion in 2019 to housing. Opposite is a parade of shops, and to the left of these is an alley. Follow this through to a road, and then on the left by a telegraph pole, a footpath which will take you down into a lane. Style Cottage on the left and number 6 Farm Close Lane on the right date from the 17th century. There is a good view over the rooftops towards the church, Turn left at the end into the square. Was the centre of the tanning business, starting with the slaughter of cattle from markets held at the Crown Inn until 1909. The hides would have been lice-ridden, and this was probably the reason for the local name of Louse Hill, for the site of the old thatched dwellings on the raised south side. These were pulled down in the 1960s for more modern housing. During the tanning process, the hides were washed using water from the stream which ran behind the high street houses, many of which were also used for the tanning business. Numbers 113 and 115 High Street were originally part of the Chequers Inn, which closed in the 1920s. Walk along Crown Road to the site of the Crown Inn, an old coaching inn dating from 1544, now 19 and 23 Crown Road. Heavy horses may well have been loaned from here to pull coaches up Shotover Hill. In the 1790s, the coaching route was altered, and as the Crown Inn was no longer on this route, a tap bar was built on Church Road, Back Lane, for customers now the main part of 116 Church Road. A little further along Crown Road and opposite is Rectory House, dating from about 1630, originally the farmhouse for Castle Hill Farm. A new farmhouse was built up the hill to replace this in 1962. Now retrace the steps to Crown Square. The United Reformed Church was once a tanning barn, but was converted to a church in 1841 to 1843. In front of it to the east was a cottage which was demolished and rebuilt in 1898 as the Sunday School. Adjacent to this is one of the houses used for tanning and drying hides. It was sold in 1849 for private housing. Oak panelling in one room is said to have come from Holton House, where Cromwell was in attendance when his daughter Bridget was married to Henry Ireton on the 15th of June 1646. Opposite is the earlier post office, 1926 to 2017, before it transferred adjacent to the Merry Bells, replacing Barclays Bank, which had closed. There was a tannery here before William Avery, founder of the sawmill, converted it to a dwelling house, later named after his son-in-law, Robert. It was used to accommodate evacuees during World War II and was later converted to 3 flats. Opposite is an attractive row of 18th century buildings. 101 High Street was once owned by All Souls College, Oxford, a prominent landowner in the village in the 1590s. These houses, 95 and 97, were built in the 18th century. By 1876, they formed a shop kept by Joshua Harris, who sold millinery, grocery, ironmongery and medicines. In 1967, Mr. J.C. Kelly took over the business and called it James's Supermarket. The premises were then separated and are now residential. Between the 17th and 18th centuries, and aside from agriculture, Wheatley's local industry was quarrying and brickmaking. It seems that the workers were prone to drunkenness. To counter this, in 1888, Mrs. Miller of Shotover House provided the Merry Bells as a temperance hotel. In 1970, it became Wheatley's Village Hall. We hope that you've enjoyed your visit to our village. Further details about the history of Wheatley can be obtained from the Wheatley Village Archive in the Merry Bells, which is open according to information on our website, wheatleyarchive.org.uk. We are pleased to acknowledge the various organisations shown.